question of the European feeling is more than ever at the heart of the debate. Moreover, as young Europeans studying in a business school like ESCP, we should be even more aware of what being European means, given our 6 campuses in Berlin, Madrid, London, Warsaw, Turin, and Paris, in which this conference is broadcasted. However, with the war in Ukraine, the rise of nationalisms and other challenges Europe is facing today, the European identity is threatened and so more complex to define. How can we define the European feeling? What does it mean to the youth? And can we bring together all Europeans under one identity? This is what is at stake today. I will now give the floor to Mr. Rotalino, Executive Vice President of the ESCP. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Dear distinguished guests, dear students, in presence and in the other campuses, it is an honor for me to open this roundtable about do young people or youth feel European. From eyewitness, I think you feel very European. I've been in Strasbourg last week, and I could really felt how European you are. But the question is a little bit more larger than your sample. And I really would like to thank Tribune for organizing this European Week. And I'm very happy to welcome tonight Madame Talino, French Secretary General of the Franco-German Youth Office, Miss Morija El Armani, who is joining, who is bringing the point of view of the young people, and then Dr. Martin Schäfer, Plenipotentiary Minister at the German Embassy in France. So it seems quite, while I was writing this speech, I said, okay, we have a Franco-German, in Italian we say tandem of couple, represented here in this first roundtable of the European Week. And it is to me quite obvious that we start with France and Germany. But why that? Well, I think that most of you are familiar with the Europe Day, which falls on the 9th of May. But what happened on the 9th of May? It is actually the date in which the European Union, as we know it now, was conceived. And it was in that day, in 1950, that the French Foreign Minister, Robert Schuman, proposed to place French and West German production of coal and steel under a single authority. This authority later evolved into the European Coal and Steel Community, and then the 2 founding members were quickly followed by the Benelux, so Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, and Italy, which sounds a little bit weird, because in Italy, I can tell you, I come from Italy, there's no production of coal at all. But the idea was quite revolutionary, and it was like, okay, after Second World War, in which at the end of the day, countries were fighting for resources, okay? Whatever you mean for resources. The idea was like, if we want to thrive, if we want to develop the economy, if we want to have a long period of peace, we need to share. So the idea was sharing. And by the way, the production of steel and the extraction of coal is really in between Alsace, Lorraine, the Ruhr Valley, and then in Belgium, So putting all these common resources together, for which all those countries that have been fighting for before, and then making it available also for other countries that needed to develop and have access to these resources, and here is the example of Italy, was quite revolutionary. if we enjoy until now, this is my point of view, of course, then you can ask the expert tonight, to develop a little more. But if we enjoyed such a long period of peace, is because we really switched the mindset. And I think that with these regards, all you guys, all you young people, you feel more European than maybe what you think, because you're really into an economy which is sharing economy. You're sharing much more than what we used to share in the past. And sharing was at the beginning of the European Union. So for our school, the European model, rooted in humanism and multiculturalism, it has been a pillar since ever. And as you know, we celebrated last year the 50 years of our European model. It's actually 23-24 academic year. Of course, last year we also celebrated the 60th year of the Élysée Treaty, which is the treaty between Germany and France. It's like a very important treaty between the two countries. And so I really look forward in after all this celebration of friendship among the European countries, to see and listen, to those to the guests tonight. And for this reason, I want to thank again Tribune for organizing this event, the president, Sarah El-Saher, and Gobin, who is going to be moderating together in this roundtable. And I wish all of you a very good conference.
Thank you very much for coming to our first European Week roundtable. To begin, let's turn our attention to our guests. Antalino, you're the director of the French Secretary General of the Franco-German Youth Office. Could you please tell us what it is and what are your main activities?
Yes, of course.
You have the...
Sorry. Yes, of course, maybe just two quick remarks at the beginning. First, I apologize if my English is having some problem, because I'm speaking German the whole day, so it's quite difficult sometimes for me to switch to English. Second, it was mentioned two or three times that I'm the French General Secretary. It's not to the fact that I am French, but I have been appointed by the French government, which means that I have a colleague in Berlin, Mr. Buteau, who is appointed by the German government, because the French-German Youth Office, and there we come, is an international organization, more precisely a bilateral international organization, which has been created in 1963, following the 6 months after the Élysée Treaty. We are a child of the Élysée Treaty, and whose aim and goal are to support first the project and program and exchange between French youth and German youth. And since the 70s, we have broadened this goal, and now we also support projects with other European countries, which mean French, German, plus one or some more European countries, also countries from the Eastern Europe, as well as the north of Mediterranean, and especially the Maghreb. We are very European, is a part of our DNA. Europe is a part of our DNA, because as French-German friendship was one of the motor of the foundation of Europe, we had also, and it's also in our status, written that our goal in sustaining and financing project of the young people is to achieve them to get to know more each other. So it was also aftermath Second World War. So it was very important. It was this idea of never again, and favorizing exchanging between young people was the idea that when they are adult, they won't come to the idea of being at war, because France and Germany have been 3 times at war in 70 years in the past, and this is also something very important. you have been born with Europe, but this is not the case of the people. I have been born with Europe, but this is not the case, for example, of my father and of the generation before us, and this is also a very important point in what we are living right now. But coming back to French-German Youth Office, since 1963, we sustained, we financially helped more than 9 million of young people doing their exchange. This can be during the scholar course. This can be after, when you are doing studies like you are doing. This can also be in extracurricular activities like sport. Now the Olympic Games are coming, and we financed a lot of programs regarding sport. And after the pandemic, it was also very important because sport is a factor of, for example, a factor of psychological wellness, well-being, as well as, for example, culture. We have also a lot of cultural programs that we are founding between all those young people. And our also DNA, which is really how can we encourage a civil society representing by the young people to achieve peace, to maintain peace, to build peace, is something that is very recognized now. We have also worked in the Balkan area, and we have now a sister or brother in the Balkan area, which means an office who is doing the same thing that we were doing at the size of the Balkan region. And this is, I would say, nowadays more important than ever. And for example, the last 2 years, we worked also a lot with Ukrainian refugee, young people from being Ukrainian refugees.
Thank you. And what about Miss Alamrani? You're a young ambassador, and despite the fact that maybe less and less people are learning German in France, you are a motivated person who decided to join the office. Why did you join, and what are your motivations?
Yes, thank you. So thank you very much for the invitation today. And yes, actually, as was presented in the beginning, my name is Nuhaila, so it sounds to be not like European, and it is the fact. I am originally from Morocco, and I have studied in France. I joined an international study program in medical engineering, and I was graduated in 2021 from both universities of Grenoble-Alpes University and the Friedrich Alexander University in Germany. And this is the source of my motivation today of being here and to share with you and to let you know the opportunity I have gained in being in a French university and the borders I have crossed to succeed not only in my study program and also my professional career. So the story have begun with, of course, my studies in the Grenoble-Alpes University, and I had this chance of going to Germany to continue my master degree, and it was the case. And actually, to be honest with you, first I had only the idea of going for 1 semester, and it was a wonderful experience, and I decided to extend it to 1 year and to do my internship of the engineering diploma there. So as a student, it seems, of course, that it's an only exchange in program students or intercultural experience, but actually it was ultimately more than this. And there is where I have discovered, and it was an experience of an opener eye of the European values. And of course, as an international student within an international program, I have met many students from all over the world, from America, from Asia, from Africa, and etc. But what was special is that when we met with European students, it was different. And there we felt the affinity, and there we felt the new unity, and there we felt the closeness of being European and of exchanging something that was common. And I was thinking in the end of my experience within Germany that my studies have ended up and my professional career have already started in France, but still I had felt the responsibility of spreading the message I have learned and spreading also the motivation, and I hoped that all the students within Europe being aware of the opportunity that they have within Europe, whatever their origin is, whether they are European or not, they still have to share these values, whether they are citizens or only residents. And that was actually my core motivation of being here today and sharing it with you.
And finally, Mr. Martin Scheffer, you are Deputy Head of Mission at the Embassy of Germany in France. Could you explain what is your role?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for your invitation. I think it's great that you spend some time in your curriculum and your studies on European affairs, and I hope we can dwell on that a little bit more in the course of that discussion. I try to make my little contribution to an institution of around about 200 people, which is the German Embassy in Paris. Our role is, as any other embassy in any other country, to try to understand to the best of our abilities the country that we reside in, and to organize official bilateral relations, in this case with the government of France. Here in France, for us Germans, there's a double challenge. The first one being that we are both members of the European Union, which means that huge chunks of what would be bilateral relations with other countries have become multilateral relations within the European Union being dealt with in Brussels. So a lot of what unites us and what separates us as Germans, as French, at the end of the day is being decided neither in Berlin nor in Paris, but in Brussels. But we play a role in understanding French positions, discussing with the French government certain divergences we might have on European issues, and try to make a contribution to finding the right compromise in Brussels. And the second very specific issue is the special relationship between Germany and France. I think we might come up to that in the course of this discussion. Maybe here only one or two sentences. Germany and France were engaged in four wars since the beginning of the 19th century that have caused many millions of lives of young men and also of civil population. And I think it was on the 8th of May 1945 when certainly French and Germans, but also other Europeans, Belgians, Italians, and others, recognized that once and for all this must stop, and that we need to find a new way of cooperating with one another on the European continent. And France and Germany ever since have been in the center of exactly that change of heart and that change of mind that the professor has already alluded to. So here there's two countries, Germany and France, that are as close as no other countries in the world in many ways. If you wish, I can explain that in more detail. So we carry a joint responsibility, France and Germany, for a good future for our European continent that in many ways is under a foreign threat and under a lot of internal challenges that we need to face together.
We will go back to the threats maybe later, but as you know, the conference is about the European feeling, and this is quite a vague term that we need first to define. Is it, according to you, a way of thinking, of acting, or just a feeling? The European feeling. Is it more than just a feeling? As you wish.
In my life, I have spent about a third of my years on this earth out of the European continent. I was posted to Ukraine. I spent some years in Latin America, and I was for a long time in Africa and the United States. And my sense is, and I don't know whether anybody amongst you shares that feeling, that when you live outside of Europe, then it becomes a lot easier to feel and understand what it is being European. because the further away you are and the more different the life that you live actually, wherever that might be outside of Europe is, the more you get a sense of what it means to be European. And for me, it is a mixture of a way of life, of our lessons out of history, and the values that we all share on this European continent, because I'm convinced that what we have built since 1945, beginning in 1950 with the Robert Schuman speech, is the most durable and the most wonderful place on earth, in the sense that nowhere else on this earth ever, for so long, we have created a region of peace, of freedom, of prosperity and of diversity as we have in the European Union. And I think when you don't have it, each one of those four elements, peace, freedom, prosperity and diversity, wherever you are, you sense that something is lacking, and we have that in Europe. And that's for me what being European is all about.
You were talking about the European way of life, but how can you defining, owing to the fact that there is many countries in Europe, and that, well, actually the ways of life in different countries might be very different. What is the common base which could be defined as the European lifestyle?
Well, I think, once again, we share the same values. We have tolerance with one another. If there's one region in which we have accepted the other's particularities, it is Europe. It is a way of tolerating one another. It is a way of sharing our convictions that a democratic political dispensation, the rule of law, and a social market economy are the basis for a good life for all European citizens. And as long as we share those values, which are unfortunately here and there, even within the European Union, rather contested, I think we know what it means to be European. And I can only reiterate, once you have lived, or you live in a place where all those components of what it means to be European are not united, you sense that very quickly, and there's something that is lacking.
If I may add something to the point.
Of
Okay,
course.
okay. No, I'm just looking at you. I think an interesting point in the field of culture, because you see there is an immense diversity of culture in Europe, but if you see film coming from one of the 28 countries, you can feel, you see, it is European. And I think this is this confrontation between the diversity and our common identity, which is particularly interesting and which make us feel European. The Europe is very developed in many ways in the culture areas, and we have sometime we would like to be able to define a more common European culture, but I personally think it lives from this diversity, so we know it is European. And I have had the chance to live in Germany for 16 years, and I also lived a little bit part outside Europe. You, even if you feel you are in a very different country than the ones you've been living before, you feel very quickly what are the bonds that we have, what we have in common. The only exception maybe I have was, I think it was 2007, the football match, the final, France-Italy with Zidane story with Materazzi, because I had the chance, if I could say that, to be in the stadium, and it was terrible to see the supporters, French and Italian, who were just shouting at each other, and I was in the middle, and I was with other French diplomats, and say, but we are all Europeans, and it didn't work out at all. But so I'm looking forward to the UEFA Cup in Germany coming. But no, apart from this, I think culture is a very interesting field to analyze, to be able to see what is to be European.
Maybe you want to add something, Miss Elamrani. You were born out of Europe, and you maybe have a different experience from your path in Grenoble and then in Germany.
Yes, definitely. To add a small example regarding feeling European, whether it is a feeling or an act, it is first in a feeling, but if I may take a small example, whether during my study program or whether here in the room, I think all of us talk different languages, and we all today feel European, and we have found a way to communicate in English, which is finally not our language, but we already went and crossed the borders and found a language to communicate, and we share the same feeling here in the same room. So this is a small example, whether of being European or not, but we are already sharing a common language, which is today international. And another example, maybe if I can compare it to the country or to the continent where I was grown, and the fact that we can feel we are European and or African or from another nation by sharing culture, being surrounded around a good meal, etc. But the fact of being European and having to cross borders without any limits, it's really, really, really a great opportunity. And these are one of the things I wasn't able to do it before. Being outside of Europe, I can tell you that I haven't visited more than 2 countries in my continent, and once in Europe I was able to already visit more than 10 countries without any administrative or any question regarding the borders and so on. And I hope all the young people among us in the room are aware of it. Any case, it is the main cause of the French-German office, and we are today among this young network to push the young to be aware of it, and to also promote how international exchange make the unity and the force. Thank you.
Nowadays, there is a certain mistrust of Europe. Young people do not very often know what led to European cooperation. Why is the European feeling that important, and especially for young people?
Maybe you can reformulate the question. I got it.
Yes. What I mean is that we gave a definition of what the European feeling is, and I would like to know maybe why it is important to feel European. Why in everyday life or in political life, in our cooperation, it is important. Why is it a strength for the European community or for young people in general?
I would think that things have changed dramatically over time. I think no young man or woman in 1950 would need to be asked what the European project was all about, because they had encountered and lived through war, destruction and political extremism. So for them it was obvious that what was decided on their behalf and on the behalf of the European people was a peace project. Now, even myself, who probably is in this room amongst the older median of participants, I was born in the late 60s, and I don't even know what war is. I know it from television maybe, or from history books, but I haven't lived it. For me, it was a fact of obvious life that on European soil, peace would be eternal. But my generation got it wrong too, because we are about to run the risk not only of war between Russia and Ukraine, but maybe even beyond on European soil, and have to do everything in our power to prevent that. So I think things have changed. I think Europe stays and remains a deeply rooted peace project, but that doesn't seem to be convincing enough for many young. So all the advantages, practical ones that have been described, passport-free traveling, roaming within the European Union, all those things are important, but at the end of the day they are a little bit superficial, because what this is really all about is to give the example to the world and to provide us with a space of liberty and freedom in which every single state has in essence only one objective, that is to make the pursuit of happiness, as was so beautifully written in the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America, the pursuit of happiness of every single European citizen, her main objective as a state. And I think many Europeans really underestimate how much freedom and liberties they really enjoy and what it means not to have them. I have lived in countries in which those liberties do not exist. And we don't need to mention any, but it's quite obvious that that's the case. And I would wish sometimes that all those that are so dissatisfied with the present state of affairs in European states, in all of our states, would get a very real sense of what it means not to have the freedoms and the liberties that we all enjoy.
And do you think that the current threats, like the war in Ukraine, or maybe the rise of nationalism in some European countries like Poland or Italy, is a threat for liberties in Europe and for Europe, what the European feeling is?
If I may maybe come back to an example, because I was struck by the example of borders, which you also evocated. Like 2 years ago, we had a program in Strasbourg with young French, German youth, young people coming from Armenian and Azerbaijan. And we had this quadripartite program, and we brought them to the bridge between France and Germany, and we went back, and they couldn't believe it, that they could go across this bridge coming from France to Germany and getting back without any control, anything. And it was a very striking experience for the young people from Armenia and Azerbaijan to see exactly, to live what it is not having a border. So this is a part to add to what just Martin said. But then if you take, we did a little research on some polls that we have about young people and feeling European. And you see we have an example from a research of 7,000 people between in Europe, made by the TUI Foundation, or one from the Institut Montaigne, 2023 and 2022. And you see, for example, that 59% of the young people between 16 and 26 see their own identity as more European than national. 43% would like to see deeper European integration. They sometimes have greater trust in their in EU than in their national governments, and 43% would like to see closer relations between EU countries. And 70% of those young people feel very attached to Europe, and only 23% are in favor of for the French people, Frexit, where by the adults it's about 35% approximately. What I mean with those numbers is that it's just numbers, it's abstract, but this is something we could work with. This is a base. This is also a base because, as Martin said, the Europe has been changing and evolving, and I think the last 2 years and what is coming on to us for the next years to come is also going to change very much our perception of what is Europe and what Europe can bring to us. And the young people, the young people that you are, you're going to be the actors of it. You're going to be the pilots in the plane. And if we want to maintain this project of peace, of stability, of diversity, of democracy, we may have to fight, I wouldn't, in a symbolic way, for it. We don't have to take for granted what is democracy, what is peace, we have to be more mobilized than ever. And I think if I take some of those examples of that we have a common ground from the young people. Saying that, I'm very much aware that if you take today the polls in France regarding the oncoming elections for the young people, the first party they are going to vote for is Rassemblement National. Okay. But we have to work with that, also present them what Europe can do for them, what they can do for Europe. We have to work on that. We have to mobilize ourselves, and you have to mobilize yourself.
Mr. Martin Schäfer, when you meet a Franco-German, for instance, it's possible that you ask them whether they feel more German or French, but never if they feel European. How can you explain this? Do you think that the European feeling is present in the identity of European citizens?
I think there's no mutual exclusion between feeling French, German, and feeling European. I think you can have all at the same time. In the relationship between France and Germany, also because of the very beneficial work of the Office of German-French Youth Exchange. Anne talked about 9 million people. I don't know how many marriages and love relationships you have created, but there must be thousands, probably many thousands of babies of that kind of exchange program. So there are so many people among us that feel German and French at the same time because of the way they were raised, because of their life experiences. They are both French and German. And at the same time, they can feel European. I would have difficulties if you ask me whether I'm, first of all, German or European. I would have to think about that and look deep in my soul in order to find the proper answer. I would probably respond that not only I'm German and European, but also from a certain region in Germany, from northern Germany, which is part of my identity. And the great thing about this wonderful peace project and freedom project Europe is everything is allowed as long as everybody amongst us has the tolerance and the will to accept the diversity and the tolerance of all the others. That at the end of the day is a philosophical principle by Immanuel Kant and others that is already very old. But there are not many regions in the world in which it has been put into very real practice. So I think on that one too, we have every reason to be proud of what has been achieved. And for a couple of years, it will be the generation of Anne and myself who run things, and we hope that we can hand over responsibility for this wonderful European peace and freedom project to you or to a generation between us and you, and that you will, in your own way, try your very best to preserve what we have achieved, because circumstances change, the geopolitical, geo-economical situation in the world has certainly deteriorated, but there's no reason for despair. What we have achieved after the war was at the time a lot more improbable than getting a good future in view of the challenges that we're facing now. There's no reason for defeatism, there's no reason for pessimism. We'll make it if we believe in the values that have created this beautiful Europe.
You talked about the Franco-German cooperation and relationship. We saw that lately it kind of struggled on some points. Do you think that when this relationship is struggling, this is Europe as a whole which is struggling?
Yes, yes, but that's because Germany and France are not only the two biggest member states of the European Union in terms of their economic might and their demographics, but they also represent certain strands of political thinking. Whenever Germany takes a certain position on a certain European issue, be it economic policy, social policy, energy policy, you can be fairly sure that a rather high number of Northern European countries, including Denmark, the Netherlands, the Scandinavian countries, tend to agree with that kind of thinking. Whereas when France takes a certain position, there's a rather high probability that countries like Greece, Italy, Spain, and possibly a couple of others take a similar point of view. So we, in a sense, when there's German-French bargaining about political differences that we have, we, if you want, always and informally negotiate on behalf of groups of countries. And I think that that has been, that continues to be the essence of German-French relations, that an agreement that the two countries find amongst themselves is a necessary prerequisite for any compromise in Brussels. It doesn't guarantee anything, because things have changed with the enlargement process to the east, to the north, etc. But still it remains a prerequisite. And if we don't succeed in finding compromises, there's a very high chance that Europe doesn't find that either. And I think that's probably de facto the importance of the role that Paris and Berlin play.
Ms. Talino, Ms. El Amrani, the war in Ukraine seems to have reaffirmed the importance of the European feeling. Do you think that it's only during war and uncertainty that the European feeling can exist?
It's a good question. The European uncertainty for the youth generation is the good time to come together, to be engaged and to express and speak up what do they think about, and most important, how to act. From the French, German office, youth, for example, we debate about such topics and think how we can contribute and how we can create programs, if they are not already existing, to contribute to make peace. So for us, it's not really an uncertainty, but it's a source of being engaged more and more in the European values and speak up and find a way how to act and solve it.
Do you think that there is other sources, maybe? Like peace? Can the European identity be created when we're in peaceful times?
Well, the whole European project is based on peace. But to make, the Ukraine war has brought us the question of war on European continent, of our common securities, which was a new topic which we haven't lived with, apart from the Bosnian area, but we didn't live with that feeling for decades. But if you take another example, there was a moment where we had many terrorist attacks on the European soil, and we felt, I think, quite put in question our way of life, our going to cafes, living the life we wanted to live. This was attacked, and this was also a circumstance where we felt very deeply European. So I wouldn't say and wouldn't dare to say that we need to feel threatened to feel European, of course, but it's like always when you are about to lose something or you have a fear of losing something, then suddenly you feel very attached to this thing, and you value it because you have lived with for years or decades, and you haven't seen exactly what this means being in peace. You have always lived in peace. I have always lived in peace. But to be also more, I would say not positive, but optimistic, I also think that there is many, during those last decades, also many times where we felt very European. For example, the Brexit. It was a time when suddenly we asked ourselves the question, what is to be European? Because English people want to leave. It seems that now they regret it, but this was a transformation of Europe. So we may have has to ask the question of the next state who wants to become European. What does it bring to us? Some question, what this enlarged Europe is going to be like? Which means that Europe also is constantly evolving, and that's very important, I think.
I would just like to add that I don't think in any way that we need to be under an existential threat to feel European. To the contrary, I think the happiest moment in the history, in the 1,000-year-old history of my country, was the 9th of November 1989 when the wall came down. But that was, if you want, also the culmination of 4 decades of European integration. And we managed as Europeans to have not only German reunification with the consent of all our neighbors, but also European reunification. We created at that juncture of history a common currency, the euro, that we have until this day. And we opened up the European Union to our friends and brothers and sisters in Eastern Europe, and that was an incredible success story. I think that also forged European identity by positive examples. I think that's what historians would describe when they try to explain how national identities start to emerge. It is common historical experiences, and the fall of the Berlin Wall and the positive consequences of that event, I think, are part of our common European legacy that we need to remember when things get rough.
There is no doubt that the European identity is strong, yet we saw that for the previous European election, a vast majority of young people in France, for example, didn't vote. How would you explain that, Miss El Amrani? How would you explain that? And what can we do to prevent it from happening for the new election to come?
I'm not surprised about what happened before, but I'm very optimistic about what is going to happen for the next European elections. I can tell you that the new generation of today feel more and more engaged, and promoting the international exchanges in general, or promoting the European values across Europe during the last years will definitely change the positions of the future generation as well. Yeah, I think that the results of the future elections will be surprising, because the generation has really getting more and more engaged in the last years.
Maybe just quick remark on this point. First, we have a problem in France with participation of young people to the election, which is very important, which is not the case in that range for Germany, for example. And we have to say for the next oncoming European election that young German people are going to be able to vote at 16 years old. And this might be something interesting. We should maybe think about it. Then for the last European election, this is true, but it was better participation than in 2014 from the young people. It was a better, we were also positively, I would say, surprised to see that there was this better participation. And we have to mobilize ourselves so that young people take part of this democratic process. This is what we are trying to do at French-German Youth Office with different programs which are financing, which are aiming at having a better participation of young people. And we're going to have a big debate on the 2nd of April with 200 young people and representatives of the youth of the different parties. Yes, we have a kind of not specificity, because other countries have this kind of specificity, having not having a very good participation of young people to the democratic those democratic elections. But yeah, we still see also well, we have also to address to the young people the topics that are interesting them. We have also, for example, we see the mobilization of young people to climate and better environmental subjects. At this point in the debate, this has been a point in France because of what happened with the agriculture protest, but this is not a theme which has been really central, which has been at this point, maybe it's going to be, but I would say to have a better participation from the young people to this election, we have to address the point that interests them. We have to take them seriously, and we also have to listen to what they have to say.
Well, the worst possible example of what happens when young people don't participate is the Brexit, because that fatal decision, fatal not only for the United Kingdom but also for the whole of Europe, in 2016 was being taken by the age group beyond the age of 60. That was the only age group in which there was a majority amongst the voters in the UK for leaving the European Union. And it seems that the young people that by a large proportion of around 2/3 thought that that was a stupid idea, like we do, did not participate either because I thought it was a gone conclusion that it wouldn't happen, or simply because they had other things in mind. I would like to add another skeptical kind of remark. We in Germany, but in Europe in general, Italy and Spain are particularly affected too. We live a period of something that humanity has never lived before, a completely turned around demographic curve. We are going to have a situation in which indeed elderly people will have the majority of the vote if we don't modify our democratic system. I think it poses a lot of very serious political and philosophical questions when societies are being driven in a majority by people who are more conservative, who are more anxious maybe, who have had their lives behind them, and we give less and less space to those who are supposed to be fresh, committed, ambitious, and creative. So the more participation of young people in the political process, far beyond voting every 4 or 5 years, we have, the better it is, I think, for the dynamism, the dynamics in our societies. But at the end of the day, you see, you are young. I was young too, and of course, I was interested in politics. But when you're young, when you study, when you're in love, when you, I don't know, have other things on mind, I can understand that many people believe that there are more important things in life than writing a cross on a ballot box. Not that I would excuse it, and I have learned my lesson, but I think that's a fact of life.
And so how would you explain that it works better in Germany than in France or other countries?
I don't have any explanation. I don't have any good explanation for it. I think, in general, the French public, and that goes far beyond the young people, is more pessimistic than in other countries. I think there is a number of surveys that prove that. But why? It's difficult. It's difficult to say. When I look at the federal elections in Germany from 2 years ago, I see that the two biggest parties represented in our parliament are not the favorite parties of the young generation. The young generation voted for the Green Party and the Liberals in a relative majority, whereas the biggest represented parties are the traditional parties of the Social Democrats and the Conservatives, or the Christian Democrats. So you see profound changes, profound differences in the way of thinking of young people in my country in comparison with elderly. And I think something of the same, maybe not the same magnitude, but of the same nature you would find in each and every country. So we can only continue to, and I think OFAGE, the Office of German-French Youth Exchange, is doing a marvelous and great job in that, in trying to raise consciousness amongst young people that it is their own destiny they have in their hands, and they shouldn't let it to the elderly to determine how they are living their lives.
We saw that voting was a way to act like a European citizen. Do you think of other ways, other measures that have been implemented by the European institutions in order to promote unity and a concrete sense of European identity among young people?
Yes, maybe I can answer for part of the question. There are many ways that we can create or find today in Europe that can spread the European values and the fact of being European, whether French or German. Maybe I can give some examples from the already existing exchange programs that are supported today by the French-German office, whether in between French and Germany or in other countries in south and west of Europe, and there is also the tri-national program that is now one of the main programs and attractive programs in the French office, in the French-German office, sorry, and it is, I think, the best way to promote European values, as it is the program that crosses European borders to let the non-European get to know more about Europe, because such they don't have much information about history or what is concretely happening in Europe. These programs enable them to let to know what is Europe, to let to know what a European lives in his daily life and what does he do in his studies, in incorporating in mobility studies, for example, or in sports or in other different fields. And this is, I think, one of the major programs that is much now attractive and helping other young people around the world getting to know more about Europe, and also inspiring them how they can put a good example in their countries and get inspired from Europe.
In my view, voting is just the tip of the iceberg of a democratic commitment of young and old, and I think that's part of the European spirit too. Nothing ever is you get for granted, and each and every generation of us will have to fight for our liberties, for our freedom, for our democracy once again. And we just started to dig a little bit deeper into the external threats, Russia and Ukraine. There are others. The internal challenges that we have with leftist and rightist populism and extremism, and other challenges that we are all facing. I think if the young want to preserve what they have found as being young adults, you have to find your own ways and means to defend what is important to you. And that goes far beyond voting, because then you risk ending up like a Russian voter. Then you don't really get a choice. You have to be willing to defend the space that the states, the societies, the nations give you for the pursuit of happiness, as I've said before. And that doesn't come for free. It comes with commitment, with engagement, and with you know, a lot of solidarity amongst you to get a chance to realize the lives that you want to live, as we were able and still are able to live the lives that our generation chose that we want to live.
I think we will end this roundtable with this message of hope. Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to the public. If you have any questions, please feel free.
It's a very simple question. I graduated from ESCP 1984. And do you have in preparation a French-German council for old age people?
Well, if I may, we mentioned the Élysée Treaty, which founded the friendship between France and Germany, but we had in 2019 the Treaty of Aachen, Aix-la-Chapelle, je sais pas comment ça se dit en anglais, where this was Aix-la-Chapelle, which gave birth to the Fonds Citoyen, the Fund of the Citizen, which is a fund which is anchored at the French-German Youth Office. That's, and it has been created in 2020, and it's a fund for the civil society, young people, middle-aged people, old people who want to achieve a project between France and Germany. And it has been very, very successful since 2020. We founded, or the team founded more than 2,000 projects between France and Germany, and this is also one of my experience with this fund or with French-German Youth Office, is when you have an offer, the demand is coming. And so if you have a project, you are be our guest to apply to it.
If I understand the question correctly, is you want to create something more on a political level for old age people. I wouldn't have anything against it. I will be an object of that group in a couple of years, so I'm very much in favor. On a more serious note, I'm inclined to say that there's nowhere ever in the history of humankind that societies took so much care of elderly people. Never in the history of my country, at least, elderly, old people have had such a great life in terms of the economic and social environment that they can thrive in as before. Health has never been better. Health systems have never been better than nowadays. Systems of pensions and other benefits for elderly have never been better. So even if I acknowledge maybe a certain interest because of the demographic development of some kind of a consultation, maybe even on the European level, I wouldn't be ashamed to say that we are not only working very much for the young people with the German-French office for youth exchange, but also we're doing a lot of things for the elderly.
Okay, so good evening. I had a question about the integration of and the debates about the integration of new countries in the European Union today, such as Turkey. So, do you think that the increase in the new member countries in the European Union could damage the European feeling of the youngest?
What we are trying to do in Europe now has never been tried before. It is an open question whether we will succeed. We have decided, and France and Germany are leading on this, that we want to enlarge the European Union to 9 additional states. So we are 27 now, 28 minus 1 plus 9 makes 36. 6 countries in the Balkans and 3 countries in the former Soviet Union. That is a bold move because those countries are in many ways not as close to our European values and the European state of affairs as other countries that we have taken on board in the course of the European integration history. And at the same time, many of us in the European Union feel that the programs, the decision-making process, and other internal factors of the European Union need a refurbishment to prepare ourselves for a union of 36 instead of 27. And we do that at the same time when we talked about that. There's a lot of external threats. We have the war of Russia. We have a Cold War between the United States and China and many other issues. And we have our issues amongst ourselves with the rule of law, with populism rising, etc. So it's a bold strategy that we're trying to implement with adhering with the adhesion of new members. We don't know whether we'll succeed, and I do acknowledge the preoccupation in your question that might change to a certain extent European identity too, because for the time being we do not incorporate in our thinking about European identity Georgia or Moldavia or maybe even Ukraine. But I do believe that if those people continue to thrive and want to live according to European values, and the Ukrainians, if any, make a huge sacrifice to be part of the European family, it is our moral, historical and political obligation to help them become members of that European family.
Hello, we have some questions from the students in different campuses. First of all, what are your expectations from the coming European election? What is at stake?
The question is so large that you can only answer it in one sentence, I would say. I would hope that the European elections bring a result that provide us with a European Parliament in which a majority of its members are pro-European, want to continue our European integration adventure, and are willing to cooperate with the other institutions of the European Union, including the institutions that represent the member states, to bring us forward on a very dangerous, difficult, and winded path to a good future.
Well, I think we see very well also what at the moment in Europe we have a rise of populism, a rise of extreme right parties. So I think what Martin said was absolutely right and true. But I think this is also this brings us in a situation which we may have known in the past, but not in the 20th century, but this is the first time that we see such a rise of nationalism also, which we may be aware how dangerous this can be, but this will be reflected in the composition of the parliament.
Good evening. I was wondering, as a young man, what should be the most important criteria which must drive my European vote, according to you?
Well, I'm not sure I would at this place give any indication on what should be your more important criteria. I leave that to my neighbors.
I would, if I were you, I would vote for the political party or the political candidate that you believe defends your freedoms and your liberties and you know, the diversity that you want to live in your life to the best of your convictions. And whoever that is, I think we cannot take away that choice from you.
I'd like to know how is Europe intending to express itself in the kind of the duel between the United States and China. Thank you.
That's a question that doctoral theses are being written on at the moment, and there's a lot of brain power in our member states and at Brussels going into that question. It is very difficult to answer that in a few sentences. I think our role would be to try our very best to prevent something from deteriorating that is rather close to a Cold War already between the United States and China, who are competing for superiority on the world scene. And if indeed we fail in that endeavor, I think one day there will be a choice for us Europeans to make where to stand and on which side to stand. And if I had to guess on which side we would, at the end of the day, eventually stand, I would make a bet on that, but I won't say what it is now.
A question from the public in the different campuses is the following one. Security is at threat because of the war in Ukraine. Do you think that the European Commission does it at most?
I did not understand the second part of the question.
Okay.
Do I think?
Do you think that the European Commission does it at most, do it best?
Well, what we have seen is that for the first time in the history of European institutions, the European Commission has started to deal with questions of war and peace. And it wasn't an easy step to take, certainly for my country, who had in the beginning of the conflict some reticences about the role of European institutions in our endeavors to support Ukraine in that brutal attack by Russia. But now here we are. Now we have a very much enlarged European Peace Fund with a lot of billions of euros in it. And we are in this together. This is where the European Commission and the European Union has a role to play in forging consensus amongst member states, in providing the financial and other means to support Ukraine on a humanitarian, financial, political, and also military basis.
And maybe if you look a bit deeper in history, not that deep, but we have to remember also the pandemic and how the EU mobilized itself on the pandemic, and what we achieved with it, as well as the plan, which was much more a French-German initiative after the relaunch plan that followed the pandemic, which means and which shows that the Commission and EU are able to take measures or to react in a very new and surprising situation.
So this is the end of this roundtable. Thank you all very much for coming. Thanks, Ms. Talino, Ms. El Amrani, and Mr. Schaffer for your presence. We would like to thank ESCP and everyone who watched this conference from another campus. And finally, our partners, the Champagne House Panier, the consulting firm Mawenzi, and the oratory school Stéphane André. We will see you for a conference with Olivia Grégoire, French Minister for Small and Medium Enterprise, Trade and Tourism, tomorrow afternoon. Thank you very much.